Big banks lending less money. Some of the country's top banks are saying that businesses feel like, well, President Trump's agenda might be stalling a little bit, so they're stalling. Want to bring in bank analyst superstar Dick Bove. Dick, you've been cautious on the banks lately, and, that's always headline news when you get cautious on the banks. What's going on here?
Well, basically, even though there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm among the business community, for the Trump programs, the fact is that most of these companies are going to their bankers and saying, we don't want to borrow money. We're not yet ready to borrow. And the banks have been complaining about that now for at least the last 3 months. They just can't get people to borrow money, because if the banks can't lend money, they can't make a profit. So I think that's where that part is coming from. People have not yet reached the point where they want to pull the triggers, build their businesses, buy inventories, increase the size of their operations, and therefore they're not borrowing money.
Well, let me ask you on that note. We had earnings from J.P. Morgan and Citi yesterday. And, for a long time, I always thought, we should never even consider bringing back Glass-Steagall. But there was something about those earnings and what I've seen recently that make me think perhaps we should reconsider that. Citigroup, of course, which perhaps is one of the big beneficiaries when they repealed it, their retail services were down 5%, banking was down 3%, but institutional business, $9 billion up 16%. J.P. Morgan, same kind of thing. On mortgages, their mortgage lending went down 18%. But nevertheless, their banking business, corporate banking was up 25%, investment banking up 34%. Dick, if these banks never have to lend to Main Street, how can Main Street ever come back to life?
But why would they not want to lend to Main Street? I mean, you'd never ask a guy who comes on the program, why doesn't General Motors want to sell Chevrolets? Why doesn't, Tesla want to sell its cars, since you mentioned them? The fact of the matter is banks want to lend money. That's how they make a profit. If they can't lend money, their earnings don't go up.
But the fact of the matter is when you have the institutional business and a trading business, you could take less risk with Main Street. Now that's okay. That's your prerogative. By the same token, though, they've gotten $4 trillion of printed money from the Federal Reserve. They were bailed out by Main Street, and they benefited from amazing political clout. So I'm just saying, hey, why don't we split them up so that there are banks out there whose sole mission, to your point, is to lend money to Main Street?
All right, let's take it from a point of view that maybe you haven't thought about. Over the last, since 1987, we've lost one small bank in the United States every day. Every day we have lost one small bank for 30 years. Why is that happening? Is someone walking into the small bank with a machine gun saying, you got to shut down so Bank of America can take over your business? It's happening because the small banks have not provided the services that the American consumer wants. If you take a look at polls of millennials, why do they not want to do business with small banks? Why do they want to do business with big banks? It's because the big banks are providing them with the products that they want. And therefore, if the Congress, with its big government attitude, goes in and says, we want to reshape, the whole financial system to benefit small banks, we're going back to the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1982, when they did exactly the same thing. The result of that was the biggest financial crisis, bigger than 2008, that occurred in the late 1980s, early 1990s, as some 4,000 of these small banks went out of business. You've got to have an understanding of what a bank does. The bank is saying, I want to make money, and I'm going to go make money wherever the opportunity exists. The fact that they're supporting, liquidity in the financial markets, the fact that they're supporting,
I don't have a problem
getting
with that,
money.
Dick. I just wish that they were.
Well, you just complained about it, Charles.
I have a problem with those being under the same roof. And I think that it does lead. I think it does lead to a lack of opportunity for Main Street America to evolve. While the stock market's near all-time highs, while banks are paying out billion-dollar bonuses, I just think that the little guy watching this show that wants a house or to start a business is getting the shaft. But we're running out of time, and I have to ask you.
He's not getting the shaft from the bank. He's getting a shaft from the government. He's getting a shaft because people like you don't understand what a bank does. There's no reason for a bank to withhold funding for the little guy on Main Street, and they're not doing it. They're the ones who are providing the bulk of the funding for the little guy on Main Street.
All right.
They do not want to hold this funding.
I'll study banking more and watch It's a Wonderful Life less, and this way I'll understand banking. Dick Bove, thank you very much. I appreciate it.